We've got Ian Adamson,
Carl's adventure outdoor hero,
coming up right now.
Hey everybody, this is Derek, and with me today is the only man who wears the used socks of Eco Challenge heroes as gloves on the trail, Carl Mandrioli.
That's so disgusting. Oh my God.
I mean, you have Ian's socks in a baggie, like it's just like the mittens. They're
not on eBay for too much, more than I want to say. So welcome to the Backpacking Blisters podcast, everybody.
Yes.
My name is Carl, as Derek just mentioned, and Derek Somerville is my co-host. He's a man who's most famous for his acting role in a Taco Bell training video. Think outside the bun.
Think outside the bun, baby. There you go.
Yeah, true story. True story.
We have a big hero that we're going to interview for you. I don't know him that well, but you actually met him. I'm curious. I have some notes I wrote down. I want to talk about this, but I'm excited to hear your take on this whole interview after we listen to this thing. So
yeah. So Ian Adamson is, like, we'll talk about this during the interview, of course, but he is somebody that I watched kind of in the late 90s when I'm in my early 20s and trying to figure out what I want to do in the world of adventure beyond backpacking. And he inspired me, along with some of the other teams, to jump into the world of adventure racing. And so like some of the, things that I watched him do on TV was just like, yeah, I'm like, I can do that too. I go backpacking, therefore I can do all this adventure stuff. And really I couldn't, but like he was inspiration behind it. So super excited to talk to him.
That is precious. I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear. Do we have Bible verse today? What do we got?
Yeah. You don't want to talk about how I'm excited to talk to you. Just like, let's just cut the chase.
No, we're gonna I want to hear it. We're gonna hear it, and then we'll get to it. I got
Well, do you have any adventure heroes? Like, is Bear Grylls your guy, or who are you talking about?
Love me some good Bear. Love me some good Bear. Look, I will say this. I've heard the interview, okay, and it was very precious to see Carl get a little. Were you a big fanboy? A big fanboy.
Incorrect. That was a straight up conversation. Not fanboy.
You were a fanboy, and you were like, I met you, and you were with Sarah, so and so. And when he said he remembered you, what did that make you feel like?
I think he was referencing you're getting ahead. We'll talk about that part afterwards, because I don't think he's referencing that. Nobody remembers me. Let's be honest. Like, people that have listened to the show for years.
Look, I have details. I wrote down copious details about it.
All right, we'll get to that then. All right, we'll cut to the chase. Bible verse for the episode, Philippians 2:4. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interests of others. Does this describe a good group member on a backpacking trip?
Is it you?
I'm not talking about specific names. I'm like in general.
I think so. I'm trying to picture. I think so. It could. Yeah.
So then why do most people not behave this way? And I don't just mean our group. I mean in general. Like, most people are not looking to the interests of others. They're just like, I'm going self-contained. I'm taking care of myself. You take care of yourself.
I think it's like one of those things where, like, when your body's struggling, it can easily become like a more self-involved scenario. Like if you're feeling good, you got the right supplies, and you're having a good time, and your body's feeling good. Like, it's easier probably to do stuff like that. But I think it really says a lot more about you when you are struggling, and then you can do that. I think, again, I refer to my death march as like, I know you guys were all struggling as well, and you're still willing to take some of my gear. So to me, it's there.
That was for sure. That's a good group. But I feel like there's a lot of the self-contained folks out there that are like, okay, this is a hard trip for me. I might have my own version of that struggle. This person's struggling way more than me. They got their own gear. I got my own gear. I'll see you at camp.
Yeah. Why go with other people?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. And I think that this whole like adventure racing, like team concept, I think maybe that's why I'm always looking to almost like behave like a team. And so I think there's a lot of things we can pull away from Ian Adamson's, his wisdom with his experiences, because they performed as like one of the most efficient teams in the outdoor world ever. So let's get to it, my friend.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Here we go.
All right. With me today is an adventure racing champion, a big-time event director, and a reality television star, Ian Adamson. How's it going today, sir?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, this is my pleasure. So super excited to have you on the show. I've followed your career over the years as a former adventure racer, and I actually this is kind of going back a ways. I watched you on TV on Discovery Channel, watching the Eco Challenge, and then your team, and then that whole show inspired me to sign up for an adventure race. And I signed up for one, just like a little local sprint race in California out of Castaic Lake called like the High Tech Series. And I show up and you're there. Like you were at the race, you're actually racing, and I met you. You probably remember that.
I do remember. I actually do. I think I was with Sarah Valentine. Might have been Sarah.
It was.
And
met her too.
I think we did okay.
You did. I think you got third place. You were with Mike Closer too. Well, that's a walk down memory lane. So he's referencing largely the Eco Challenge, which was on the Discovery Channel back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Actually went on to the USA Network eventually. And then it came out a couple of years ago again. It was reprised on Amazon with Bear Grylls hosting. And so that's been out. That was out for a year. But that was the production that kind of, I don't know, launched Mark Burnett's career. He was the producer that went on to make pretty epic TV shows with Shark Tank and Survivor and The Apprentice. And so Mark Burnett himself actually started as an adventure racer. And then that's kind of like this is where he's ended up, I guess. So
he did, yeah. Mark did the raid 3 times. He finished his third one.
Right.
I think it was Madagascar, and then got some notoriety. And then he got some Navy SEALs to put together a team. That's how he got to do a finish. Actually, you said something earlier on, which I thought was quite funny.
Okay, what's that?
He said adventure racer and reality TV show Ian Adamson.
I tried to sneak that in. Yeah, that was like the first. There's like Real World on MTV, and then there was the Eco Challenge, and that was, I think, the first Eco Challenge was on MTV. The very first.
It was one on MTV. It was,
and so it was billed as a reality show, and they're just advertising it like, can these people with like social emotional issues survive this tough race? And they're showing people breaking down and arguing and all that stuff. So, am I wrong? Is that not correct?
The MTV version was very 95 MTV.
Right.
It's kind of the camera work and the music and all that sort of stuff. It was less reality. It got very reality pieces of it got very much like Survivor by 2000, because Survivor had already started in 2000.
Right.
So by then they started introducing like teams with Anakin Skywalker. They were actually pretty good athletes. You had to be, really. I mean, people would laugh a little bit like, oh, they're not going to do very well. But you know what? Doing those races at all, that's hard.
For sure. But yeah, that being said, eventually came across more like a reality TV show, like you're saying. But I think, reality TV went down like an interesting road after that, where, it wasn't obviously just competitions, but the competition did play a role in that. I feel like what was great about the original Eco Challenges or the adventure races was, you're rooting for teams not just to win, but to finish the race. Like at the race, the course is like the antagonist, and you want them to finish. And a lot of times they would focus on just, people would have squabbles, but they would be likable in the end. And I think that there was a shift at some point to like, let's just focus on the squabbles and make people come across as like just generally unlikable.
There was an element of that, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The races themselves were pretty hardcore,
right.
as you could see from the TV. And the Discovery Channel versions are very much like that big Vista Discovery thing, like going across the African savannah.
I know,
The giant like the big views, and I actually really liked that style of show. They didn't have to they didn't manufacture anything, because you don't have to. I mean, yourself, you go out for a 5-day backpacking trip with your buddies, and by day 5, a few things start emerging that you probably didn't want to know about your teammates, and that's just how it happens.
That's okay. That's a good segue. Let's jump in. So one of my first questions, just to break it down, is like there's a lot of crossover I found between adventure racing and backpacking, especially when you're doing a harder backpacking trip. And so from your years of experience, what makes a good partner in crime while you're out on the trail?
Well, being a mature adult is a good start. Not bringing your own baggage, or having it but not bringing it, like just leave the baggage at home. Sense of humor, of course, is useful, because you can just laugh at if you can laugh at yourself. I think that's a really good one. We do silly things a lot as humans, and I think that people get in trouble when they don't laugh at themselves about it. It's like, oh, that was just such a dumb thing to do, but that was really funny. And the other people get all bent out of shape about it, and then take it out on someone else, which is even worse. Mm-hmm. And you'd see that in teams that imploded, whether it's fast packing, just going for hike, mountain climbing, mountaineering, adventure racing.
Right.
Anytime you're together with people for any period of time, could be sailing or going on vacation. Thanksgiving should only ever be 3 days long. You should never have more than that, because you can't spend that much time with the family, kind of things. It's like the same.
Yeah, tell that to all the visitors. That does not work in my household.
There's a statute of limitations for Thanksgiving. Yeah. It's just like that.
I've tried. Trust me. That's so funny. Yeah, I think, okay, so the sense of humor, honestly, our podcast is pretty much about that. It's just like making fun of each other for the dumb stuff that we do. But, and you're with like elite athletes when you're racing, but from the perspective of like the middle of the pack to the back of the pack, I found it really hard to find people that had the will to go on in adversity and just simply not quit. And so we had to cycle through various teammates because they would just quit, like for no reason at times. They're like, I'm just getting tired. I've had enough. I'm like, we spent a lot of money to do this stuff, and you're just like bailing on me right now. So the rule for us was like, anytime somebody quit on us in the middle of the race without a good reason, like they just weren't going to do it again. But I'm looking for that in backpacking too. Like I want people that can make the trip, like make the journey, even if it's hard, even if they, twist their ankle or have, a tummy ache or whatever. And so I'm guessing that, from your perspective, it was just assumed that would not be an issue. Is that correct?
Yes. Very different for our team. We searched for and almost inevitably ended up with people who were already world champions in something. Now, that was not because they were world champions. It's because to be a world champion, you had that no quit attitude.
Right.
And we knew they would dedicate themselves to it. Whatever it took, they would do it. And there was a learning curve. We had people like Sarah Ballantyne, multiple mountain bike World Cup champion and world champion.
Right.
And a great skier, there was a lot of things she couldn't do very well. And her early, like Mike, their early eco challenges and adventure races, they were not particularly successful, which is not surprising because you need a lot of skills. But to your point about dedication, they were dedicated. They were, all right, I'm weak at that. I'm going to get good. I'm going to get really good.
Right.
Which is what we require, because you can't have any weakness. So the top end, back in the day at least, you had to be able to compete at national level, as in national champs, at a minimum, and ideally compete at international level in everything.
Right.
Which meant like Mike and Michael Tobin, who was also a world champion in triathlon, they were okay navigators, quite handy, but not world class. Not even national level. So they spent a few years training and then won a world champs in orienteering.
Okay.
Yeah, that gives you the level that we'll go to.
That's the bar right there. The bar
back in the day, it's different now, but that was motivated by a very large amount of money. And we actually relied on it. We were professional athletes with a professional team that that chose that life. Like if you were an engineer, if you're going to be an engineer and stick to a good job and get promoted, you need to do really well. You can't just kind of coast along in the mid-pack with the engineers, or you'll just be a mid-pack engineer just coasting along, having an okay life.
You can't just show up. You got to,
show up. You can't just show up. Yeah. It's like your example. Like if you're employing, let's say you're employing people for your backpacking group, and you only employ good people, not average people who are going to quit the job.
Oh, to employ, that sounds like a really awesome scenario. To hire them, or maybe I guess the opposite would be the guiding part of things. But to have a professional backpacking group. I'll work on that one. We'll
skin in the game.
Give
them an incentive. Skin in the game, right? So if you make it all the way through, we'll all walk off happily and have had a great experience. And if you don't, you're going to pay for it. Actually pay for it.
That's right.
There's a big pot. There's a big cost to this.
Right.
If
you're the trip wrecker, you're paying for everybody's trip, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. 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 We haven't had that issue in a while. We've kind of like pared it down and made sure that we haven't had that issue. But that is a good point. Something to consider in the future.
Or like you're paying for gas, something like that.
Right. Yeah. Just make it cheaper, I suppose. It's honestly more common in we have a lot of folks that are just like new to backpacking, just getting into, or just trying to figure out who their group is. And it's more common in that scenario. People are trying to figure out how to set these trips up and so on and so forth. There's a lot of failures in the process, or we're going for 3 days. They only end up making, 1 or 2 as a result. And so, having
expectation, right? Just like the name of your show, backpack and what? Blisters. Well, guess what? You're going for a long time on your feet. You're probably going to get them. Just know that.
That's right. Our original tagline was not backpacking unless there's a few blisters along the way. So, all right. So let's get to so the meat part of this episode is we want to talk to an expert such as yourself to figure out like what your secrets to endurance sport success related to just adventure in general. So what are 3 things you've learned over the years that might not be common knowledge to the weekend warrior?
Something that people do look at and should look at is the weather.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go out if there's a blizzard, like an unseasonable blizzard forecast. But what people fail to do generally is understand the weather patterns.
Okay.
So yeah, it might look nice tomorrow or the next day, or the prediction might be good. But if, let's say, you're hiking in the mountains, you know what? You're hiking in the mountains, and guess what happens in the mountains? Pretty much guaranteed weather will come through. That is part of the deal. You will have weather of some sort. Right. Weather is good. You want to have weather of some sort. Right. What that weather is, that's the kicker. So you got to kind of plan that into the possibilities. Like, oh, it looks like nice weather. We're going to plan for that. No, don't plan for that. Plan for the fact that you're in the mountains and mountain weather will change.
Right.
So plan for that. Yeah.
Plan for the change is what you're saying.
Plan for the possibility. Statistically, I mean, maybe people probably won't go into the detail I would. Like planning a race, for example, where it really matters. But I would look at the probability of something happen, no matter what the forecast, and then the historical extremes, not the averages. Most people look at the averages like, oh, it's a nice day and it's spring and it should be fine. Should be and will be are different things.
Right. Yeah. You can't say should be in Colorado. You never know. But okay. So here's the thing. In California, when I'm in the Sierra Nevadas, I don't even have to look at the forecast. I can just look at the clouds throughout the day and I could tell you if it's going to rain, if it's going to clear out, what's going to happen. Like, for whatever reason, I can read that. In the Rocky Mountains, I'm never right. Like, even you can compare the forecast to what I'm seeing in the sky, and it looks like it's just going to start pummeling us, and it doesn't, or vice versa. So I just feel like it's a mixed bag. Are you better at this?
Doubtful.
Okay. I mean, you live in Boulder for part of the year, so you gotta, I'm sure you spend some time in the Rockies. Like, can you?
30 years in the Rockies.
Yeah.
Yeah, 30 years running around the Rockies. Totally unpredictable. Yeah, you can't.
So you see, rain coming down 15 miles away. It's not raining on you. Can you determine it's going to rain on us or it's going to skip over us?
Nope, cannot. Okay. If you see that rain, you can see it a mile away, and it might miss you.
Right. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you could be standing in it and looking across the valley and it's sunshine. You're going, what the hell?
Yeah.
Why am I not over there?
I know.
But you're not over there because you're on maybe you're on the south side of the ridge for some reason, but that's, you're not there. Well, there are a few things you can kind of skirt around, I suppose. Knowing prevailing wind directions and looking at the vegetation. So the vegetation will grow where there's moisture and it won't where it isn't. And you'll tend to see trees bent over you and it's going to get super windy. But there's some basic things you look at about geography and vegetation and animal tracks that tell you a lot about what actually happens, because the animals are not dumb. They're going to go for things like they're going to go to water. They're not going to go somewhere they can't walk. So animal tracks are kind of cool because you can use them to your advantage. And if all of a sudden there's an absence of them, you're going, well, they're not here for a reason. And that reason could be many things, but it's probably not good.
Okay, so you're moving fast on the trail and you're paying attention to animal tracks for all the scenarios you just talked about. You're that focused on what's going on. You're actually in tune with the animal tracks. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot more than that, because height of vegetation, especially in mountainous areas, when you're going through, all of a sudden the big trees disappear. You're going, that's really weird. Let's say you're traveling on the south side of a valley, which would be heavily vegetated, get some good sunshine, gets moisture, and then all of a sudden it disappears. I would then look uphill to understand why. Meaning, is it avalanches? Is it rock falls? Is it something that I've really got to pay attention to? Is it water? What is it? Or maybe it's something else. Wind direction is important. And smell, people ignore that one. You can smell things that are useful to you when you're hiking along. If you smell smoke, you go, oh, that's probably a person or a fire.
Right. One of the two.
Depending on the time of year. Now that could kill you, which would be the fire, or it could be smoke, which means, oh, there's people over there and they're probably somewhere good making the fire and having a camp, and there's probably water and like a stream or a lake. So you can use that kind of thing. People ignore smell a lot, and they shouldn't, because you can smell food, you can smell exhaust, you can smell all sorts of useful things just to move around, just to navigate. And we would use that a lot, racing. Smell, listen for stuff. That can be misleading because you're not quite sure where that comes from.
Right.
But if you combine it with a little bit of geography, topography, time of day, and wind direction, you can usually get a sense of what that might be. Or smelling a bear, for example, like, oh boy,
Right.
yeah, don't want to get tangled up. Don't want to tangle up with that. But at least
So you're not like walking down the trail with your teammates, your buddies, talking about like top 5 favorite pieces of candy. Like, you are so in tune with everything that's going around you. That way you are prepared for anything. Is that accurate?
In the racing context, it would be, if you're a team of 4, you've got 4 pairs of eyes, 4 brains, 4 noses, 4 sets of ears. You've got all these senses you can use. And so the job of the team as a group is to navigate. This is another trick that a lot of teams would fail at. They'd have a navigator. All right. What happens when they get tired? What happens when their sight goes out? There's a lot of what ifs with a navigator. If you've got 4 who are always paying attention to something and have a job and communicate really well, like, all right, whoever happens to have the map and happens to be, we would share it because we were all quite good at navigating. Whoever was on point at that point, someone would be maybe breaking trails, someone would be in the back of the pack looking around, looking for stuff. So everyone would have a job. Okay. And the job of the primary navigator at that point would be, say, to tell everyone what's coming up and what to expect. It's kind of dumb to get to a trail intersection and then stand there and scratch your head and go, okay, what do we do? It's like, in about 1 mile, which in this vegetation means in about 15 minutes, we are going to hit a trail intersection, or we're going to hit a trail and we need to look for that trail. And we're going to go right if it looks like kind of that stuff. So everyone's thinking about it. Because if you've got 4 people doing it, your chances of catching that trail are way higher.
For sure. I'm trying to think of, if in the backpacking context, giving people jobs, there'd be a lot of jobs handed out. Like, your job is just to keep going, just to stop resting, stop sitting down on the trail. That would be what I'd have to hand out, especially my co-host Derek. So I don't know if I could find that many focused people. You were definitely dialed in. So you mentioned paying attention and addressing the weather. I got a scenario for you here. Last fall, we did a trip to the Grand Tetons, and the forecast looked terrible. Rain the whole time, and it was in September, so it was going to be colder. We're going to higher elevations. Would you still go on that backpacking trip? Were you?
Oh, it sounds good. Sounds super fun. I like winter stuff, so I would, let's say, this is exciting.
Okay. We had 10 cancellations on that one. That's what I'm asking. So 10 out of like 13.
With the right group of people, with the right expectation and the right equipment, sure. Sounds great.
Yeah. No, we had a great time. It was a great time, but just,
Yeah. But most people are going to be, not for me. It's going to be cold and miserable, and we're going to get lost, and it's going to be wet at night, right? And I'm thinking, maybe we get lost. Because that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have fun.
That's the attitude. I like
and
that.
And laugh at ourselves like, we got so lost on that trip. That was hilarious.
Right. All right. With your answer to the question, you wrapped in all sorts of things. I don't know if those were your number 2, number 3, but the original question was about 3 things you've learned, 3 secrets to your success. So weather was the main part of the answer. Do you have 2 other ones, or was it the animal tracks and the?
Well, expecting unexpected. However, for competition, I guess maybe even any long distance stuff at all.
Okay.
Learning to not just embrace the suffering, but to look for the suffering as an opportunity.
Okay.
This is where it kind of gets turned on its head, because we used to say we have achieved excellent suffering. Get to that level of suffering that is excellent. Meaning this is new. Like, oh my God, this is new. We would look forward to it. It got to the point, it was almost an illness, I suppose, like masochism, is that we'd sort of joke about it because it's horrible. I mean, suffering is just a nasty, horrible thing. Until you can turn it around and look forward to it. And we would actually look forward to it. Like, when are we going to get there?
Yeah.
When are we going to get to that excellent suffering part of the race, where knowing that everyone else is going through the same thing, but if you turned it around and enjoyed it and kind of laughed at yourself about it, like, oh, we're doing, you know, our feet are falling apart and I'm bleeding from the eyeballs and my ear fell off, that kind of thing. And you can laugh about that and laugh at each other about it. It's a kind of a fun experience. And there's no question it's painful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible from a physical perspective, but if you can mentally kind of spin it around. We also there was another part to this. The suffering it's a lot of it's physical, like it's actual pain. There's physical pain. It can be like, let's say you got badly blistered feet. It's painful. It's miserable. It's just a horrible experience. But you can't see the pain. You can't smell it, feel it, touch it. It doesn't really exist. So we'd have these endless philosophical conversations about, okay, you feel this, like our feet are hamburger right now. Clearly our feet are causing the pain, but you can't smell it. You can't see it, smell it, touch it, hear it. There's no indication that it's there. It's only in your head. So if you switch it off, you can actually do it, by the way. We figured out
you're getting into like a headspace where you're like, I'm just not going to acknowledge that pain exists.
That's right. And as soon as you do, it's impossible to even walk. Like you're actually in a wheelchair. We've had this experience in races where we'd be running to the finish line on day 7 with bleeding feet and, you know, pretty bad stuff going on. Infected bleeding feet, not uncommon.
Right.
You cross the finish line, and we'd all of a sudden go, "Oh, it's okay. I can admit it now." And then you actually couldn't stand up and couldn't walk.
Oh, I
see.
see.
It was impossible. You could crawl,
Right.
or someone could put you in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And you'd just been running 5 minutes earlier. And how did I do that? Because you're the hell not going to run anymore.
Right.
Not for
I don't know if
few
there's a lot of
weeks.
backpackers that are running with their feet destroyed. I've seen some pretty destroyed feet, but
I bet they could. If there was a bear, if there's enough motivation.
That's right. That's a good point.
People can
That's a
do
good
it.
point. Yeah.
Or there's a rock fall as you're walking along. You go, oh, there's a rock fall. I better run. Of course they will.
Get that adrenaline.
Or saving your kid, right? The kid's going to fall off the cliff. Of course you'll do it, even if your feet are destroyed. Absolutely, you'll do it, and you won't even think about it. You will not feel it. Guarantee it. And that's exactly the same mindset. It's what's the bigger thing here.
Right. You're like the Gandalf of adventure. I'm listening to what you're sharing here, and I'm agreeing with you. But the way you're saying it differently than how I think about it or say it, and so like in the backpacking world, the phrase "type 2 fun" comes up quite a bit, and you're calling it. Oh, what did you say? So the supreme suffering. What was your phrase?
Achieving excellent suffering.
Achieving. Okay. And that's definitely next level, because we're not talking about bleeding feet. We're talking about, you know, just where you're doing something very difficult and you appreciate it afterwards. I don't know if it's an age thing or not, but I've gotten to the point now where I've done this stuff long enough. I've had enough injuries where I don't care if I'm suffering on the trail. The fact that I get to be out on the trail, I'm loving every minute of it. I love the suffering part. I love the hard parts. If I'm having a tough day, I'm having a hard time making up the hill, I'm still loving it. And so
you're achieving that level. You're achieving the next. That's next level stuff. That's the understanding that we get to do this.
Right.
In an adventure race or a long backpacking trip, you're not required to do it. No one's behind you with a gun saying do it. You make that choice, and the fact that you get to do it, which is what you're saying, is fantastic. It's like, I get to do this. I get to push hard up the hill. I get to have a heavy backpack and sore feet. I get to do all these things. You get to do them. It's not. I see people on trails and they look miserable. I'm wondering why, because they chose it.
Right.
It was their equipment. It was their choice. It was their time. They're taking time off. Why would you not enjoy that?
I've scolded people on the trail about that before who were just complaining about it. I'm like, you can quit. You don't have to do this. You're choosing to. So if I've achieved this ultimate suffering stage, so you're saying I could probably be like on your team at this point.
For sure. Yeah. Especially these days. I can barely put one foot in front of the other.
Okay. All right. So embrace the suffering was number 2. All right. What's your third secret? That was a good one. These are excellent answers.
Having a completely holistic approach.
Okay.
And what I mean is being able to, it's not knowing all, it's actually at the next level, it's knowing that you don't know anything really. We really don't know much at all. No matter how much we think we know, the more you understand, the more you know, the more you don't know. Mm-hmm. I think most people know this at some level, especially if you do a lot of backpacking. you start to realize there's kind of this. It happens in almost everything, like flying a plane, which I was a pilot, so I kind of know this. There's this part of the learning curve where when you start, you know nothing, and you know nothing. It's like, oh, I don't know anything, and so you do a lot of research and education and stuff to be able to fly the plane. And then you get to this point where, yeah, I can fly a plane, I can land it, I can take off, I can make maneuvers, and that's the point where you know even less than you knew before, even though you think you know more. Right. And that's where most people die. There is it's an actual thing. Most pilots
overconfidence.
Yeah, it's overconfidence. You get enough knowledge and confidence. I'm sure you see it backpacking. You get those backpackers who've been out a few times and they're pretty confident now. Like they figure they pack out and they kind of got all this stuff going on, but what they don't know is what they don't know.
Right.
And you get over that hump and then you realize that you didn't really know anything.
Right.
And so now you're at the point where like, oh, I kind of learned a lot, but you know what? The more I learn, the more I realize I just don't know very much.
Right.
And that keeps going to the point where you just realize that there's so much more to know that you will never know it. And you just know that there's a whole lot more to know, which makes you much, much better. A much better backpacker, a much better adventure racer, whatever it is you're doing. You just get much better at it. And you see with pilots, the more the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of hours, those pilots, they realize they don't know everything. They realize there's going to be a scenario that they have never come across, and it will happen every time.
Right.
You know this too. Every time you go out, even if it's the same trail, it's always different. So at that point, you appreciate that no matter how many times you repeat something, it's going to be different every time, and you have no idea what it's going to be that's going to be different. You cannot predict it.
Right.
Just that alone is enough to make you better.
Humility can be learned. I feel like it's often learned the hard way. And the people that survive those situations that you're describing hopefully can learn from that experience and take it away. But I think that was one of the most appealing things about your team was your team always came across as very humble. And so I remember there was a race in Australia that you did, one of the eco challenges, and it was like early in the race, and one of your teammates was like, or I don't know if it was your team or one of their teams, one of your corporate teams, will say, your network. They were like, oh, are there only a few teams through this checkpoint? And they're like, you're number 35. And the person responded, they just laughed like, okay. Like it was just not a big deal. Not like, oh my gosh, we got to get going, or like, this is not who we are. It was just like, we'll figure this out. Just kind of roll with it. And then I think he turned to the cameras like, yeah, our strategy is let's start slow and then taper off. And
yeah, so, that would have been one of our teams for sure.
Yeah. And I just thought, man, the humility there makes, like that's a team that can, they can adapt, they can learn. And the person that thinks they know everything, that's going to be kind of talking at you, like you're saying, like you're not going to, you can't learn anything when you're talking at people. So yeah, 100%. But sometimes that humility has to be learned. I've definitely seen that.
It is definitely a way to get humbled every time. If you're not humbled every time, I think you're doing it wrong. Like,
right.
You come out of it going, oh, that was great. I'm fantastic. Like, you know what? Maybe you're not.
Right. Right. Or you put it in a front. So, okay. I want to get into some of your experience with like tips and tricks, specifically with just, how you handle some of these endurance events, because we've got some pretty hard events coming up this summer. I'm sure some of the folks out there have some hard backpacking trips, or maybe they're easy backpacking trips, but they're going to turn out hard. Who knows? And so during your racing career, oftentimes, you've got the sleep deprivation going, you're putting in just, crazy amounts of miles, you're pushing it in certain circumstances, and then you get a little bit of rest and you do it all over again. And so do you have any recovery tips for, while we're out on the trail? I mean, sleep didn't seem to be one of them because you're not getting much sleep. So how did you keep your muscles fresh and going, and or did you not?
Most people didn't understand what we were actually doing, even though we would tell everyone openly and honestly, we're getting more sleep than you, because we were.
Okay.
We were getting a lot more sleep and a lot more rest.
Yeah, but that's not really a lot of sleep, though. You're not sleeping for 8 hours. You might have been getting more than other teams, but you're not. I mean, you weren't having a full night.
Sometimes we were.
8 hours?
It's possible we were 6 hours for sure.
Okay.
And 4 hours was routine. Most people thought we were getting 1 or 2. Not true.
All right.
In the early days, in the 90s, 80s, 90s maybe, but we learned pretty quickly. John Howard figured it out. My teammate John Howard, who he won a lot of races. he pointed out at one point in the late 90s that the teams that were winning were getting more. The winning team would get more sleep, and the second place team would get more sleep, and the third place team would get more place in the fourth, all the way down to the mid pack, and then it would reverse. And so we were a bit skeptical, but then we started putting it into practice. And by the end of my career, my last race, I still had to treat my teammates, for which they were very thankful. They were pissed off to start with, but then they were thankful. We were kayaking across the Arctic Circle in Norway, heading up across the Arctic Circle. It was a beautiful night, leading the field by a pretty good margin. And I realized that we needed sleep, a lot of it. Because we hadn't slept enough. We'd been sleeping quite well, but not enough. And so I said, hey, we're going to stop at an island. We'll find a nice island and a hut or something, and we'll get a few hours sleep. And that became a discussion. Like, well, we don't need a few hours sleep. And my teammates would say, let's have 10 minutes sleep.
Right.
I'd say, let's have 8 hours sleep. And eventually we'd settle on like 30 minutes, right? So then we go down and say, okay, I'll set my watch for 30 minutes. And I'd put my watch in my ear with a hat around to keep it in my ear, because otherwise you don't wake up, right? You're pretty tired.
Right.
So you have your watch in your ear. And then I would actually set it for 6 hours, not for 30 minutes. So, and this is the land of the midnight sun. So who knows what time it is? So we get our solid hours of sleep. We wake up and they have no idea. We get to the next transition area, and all of a sudden we're not leading by hours, we're behind by hours in 8th place, and they were furious. And I'm thinking, this is great. Now they're motivated and slept. Within 2 hours we caught and passed the first team. The entire field, we caught them in 2 hours, and that was being many hours behind them, because they were moving so slowly at that point, and we're moving so fast. It was like they're moving in slow motion, and I know it. We've been there. Like, sleep deprived, your brain thinks you're moving at 6 miles an hour, and you know what? You're moving at 2.
Right.
No matter what your brain says. So, and when you get sleep, the time warp effect doesn't hurt you anymore. Because the teams that are sleep deprived are in their own time warp, where their perception of time is wrong compared to the rest of the world. And that's why, and we would sleep a lot. So talking now, the recovery part, this gets physiological.
Okay.
So if you're out there doing long stuff, there's a rest phase. That's where you like sit down, take your pack off, put your feet up, kind of thing. That's resting. And then there's recovery, where you actually sleep and you kind of get a bit of recovery. The problem is, for most, if you're doing, I don't know, what's a long backpack day for you? A long time on your feet?
Like probably 12 to 14 hours be longest days.
That's
typically.
Long. Yeah, because that's really long. That is truly long endurance. I mean, how many people actually go 12 hours doing anything like Ironman? It's kind of like that, right? So it's really long.
I mean, you're talking, there's still some some lunch breaks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you're really on your feet for 12 hours. That's a huge amount of time to be on your feet.
Right.
At this point, you're breaking tissue down, so you're getting weaker as you go, unless you get repair. Now, the repair phase of sleep in this actual thing, you release human growth hormone in sleep, but you need enough of it to get the actual repair. So this is where you actually need like 6 hours of sleep or more, ideally 8, but you start to repair after a certain period of time. So you have this little rest phase, recovery phase, and repair phase. Yeah.
Okay. So I think in the backpacking world, one of the takeaways I have is that, because, it's not like typically a sleep deprived type of sport, except that people have a hard time sleeping outside. And so investing in a good sleep system to help that recovery, I think is one solution that can directly be related. So okay.
The mat, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. People are not used to sleeping on hard surfaces or getting cold.
Right.
So investing in that is the number one.
Okay. Next question I got for you is, I think it was you that was talking like way back in the day about, trying to be the most efficient on the trail. And so you would go to the extremes. I think you started the trend of like cutting straps and pulling off labels and things to shave weight. And people have definitely followed through with that over the years. And you would say, oh yeah, we're taking collectively like pounds off our packs. And so you're going to the one extreme, but as you've raced with different folks and as you've kind of teamed up with different people, what have you found to be the most common item in people's packs that either they don't need or that there is like an excess of?
Excellent question. Nothing comes to mind because there's such a lot of stuff.
Right. And there's in your world, there was a lot that was required. So it wasn't like you could just say, oh, we don't really need, this locator beacon, for example.
Footwear, actually. I think that would
Okay.
be the number one thing that people would overdo. They would have, to this day, I still see it. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, you started to see light hiking boots.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, it would be the steel shanked leather boot like you'd see for mountaineering. Big, heavy thing that would take months to break in.
Right.
You rarely see those anymore. You sometimes do, but you don't. Now you see these kind of light hikers, right? Much more common, much more practical, much more comfortable.
I think you see everything. I think you still see the boots, you still see the light hikers, you see everything.
I think people have too much on their feet, and there's a reason for this. It's not just the weight. The weight, of course, is tough because that weight you're lifting up and putting down constantly.
Right.
So that thing, it's like imagine holding weights and just doing this all day. It's like, it's just like that. That's tiring. So you want light stuff on your feet is one. And two, you're less prone to injury if you are nimble and you can feel and react to the surface. If you cannot, like a big boot, you don't and you will not react until it's too late. So having something less on your foot, once you get used to it, is really valuable. It's lighter, you're more nimble, you can get out of the way fast, you can run, you can do all sorts of things with light footwear, less light. And I'm not saying it's like super lightweight, crappy stuff. I'm saying something pretty light with good sole, good grip, good protection, but light nonetheless. I think people shy away from that because
let's get specific. What do you use on the trail nowadays? What's your go-to shoe or?
I still use a racing flat, but I'm not normal. I mean, I'm more than happy going out in like an actual racing flat that you'd run on 5K on a track.
Okay.
I could show you one if you want. I just bought one for this purpose.
Yeah. Are you wearing it right now?
No, but it's like 10 seconds away from
it. Yeah. Go for it.
I'll go grab it.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So this.
All right. For those that are watching, he's got fancy.
That is I shop like Zappos for the thing that's no longer in vogue. But that is probably a 4-ounce racing flat.
It looks like a minimalist shoe is what it looks like.
Well, yeah, I mean, minimalist really is a racing flat. So it's level, super lightweight. And it's just something that someone would actually race in. This is an actual racing shoe for racing on the track.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's a spikeless, it's rubber, but it's spikeless and super lightweight, super flexible. You can kind of roll it into a ball.
Right.
That's what I would wear. Now, I don't recommend it for most people.
Right.
Because you need big, strong feet. And that happens over time. Actually, that is something that is useful. If you spend most of your time without shoes on, you develop stronger feet. And it makes it much more pleasant when you're hiking. You're not going to hike with bare feet, but it sure makes it pleasant because now you've got big, strong feet.
Yep, for sure. I've had some foot fatigue issues over the years, 100%. Okay. So... all right, I'm going to transition now. Different topic here, like very different topic. You've been involved in producing and directing athletic-based television shows since the mid-90s. So for adventure TV junkies like myself, like which ones have we heard of? Which ones have you been involved with?
Well, the Outdoor Quest. I think that was mostly in Asia. It was ESPN Star Sports.
Okay.
I've maintained very good relationship with the Eco Challenge producers, specifically, especially, I should say, Kevin Hodder and Scott Flavell. They kind of hide in the background. They don't like being on camera much. Kevin's better at it. Kevin's a very good adventure racer, by the way. They're both up from Squamish area in Canada. They got involved. They are mountaineers, very good ones, and mountain guides, and they got involved in the Eco Challenge in 1996, setting the ropes in the glacier, Squamish Glacier, big glacier. Used to be a big glacier. So they got involved then, and the super guys. I've become friendly with them. Worked on some TV shows with them. One that you may not have seen, American Tarzan. That was shot in Dominica.
I would like to see that one.
The idea was really cool. It was like American Ninja Warrior in the jungle.
Okay.
So it turned out to be
that is cool.
as many of these things do, I don't think it made it through pilot, but or through short season, but it was super fun to do. We spent a long time and a lot of money out in Dominica making this thing. There was a TV show called The Raft. That was a fun one. I was a producer. I was a logistics producer. So we took people out into the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh.
And contestants, we would take them out on separate boats overnight. And in the morning, when we got out into the ocean where you couldn't see anything except ocean, we would drop them in the water and we'd throw in a raft, a survival raft, like from a plane. Although we chopped the top off and we put cameras around it and stuff. And they met in the raft and they collected stuff from a debris field like a plane had crashed. And they met in the raft. And the idea was to see if they could survive for a week, which, by the way, is insanely hard.
Yeah.
Like, incredibly difficult.
Wow.
But you think, oh, it's only a week. It's a raft. It's like,
no.
It was so hard.
Well, you got multiple things. You have like, you've got to deal with the people. You've got to deal with supplies, water, just like the basic survival stuff, right? But you're you're in a confined environment. And then, of course, you got to deal with like the vortex that's going to suck you up into a different dimension. So that's a lot of different factors going on there.
It was, well, it's a 4 foot by 4 foot raft with no shelter. So you can't really sit, you can kind of squeeze into the corner and try not to touch someone, but that never really worked. At night, although it was summer, at night it's incredibly cold because you're always getting wet. And in the daytime, it's incredibly hot because you're sitting in the sun. And there's no food. We gave them a desalinator so they wouldn't die. And they'd have to pump it for like 8 hours a day just to get enough water to drink.
Wow.
And then and some on the pilot, the first couple of guys were terrific. They were survivalists and they managed to not just catch fish, like they kind of ate quite well. There's a lot of fish out there, so they catch mahi and all this stuff, cooking it. I mean, they're doing all sorts of crazy things, like cooking it in aluminum foil. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. There was this whole range of people who were completely inept, and they'll be lucky to make it one night. And then there's people who fought like cats and dogs, but were determined to make it. And then there was people who ended up like really liking each other a lot. Couples. So there's this whole range of stuff going. It was a super fun show. The Raft. It's still being. It got sort of franchised, so it's now. I think there's one in Denmark and the Germans run one. They're all over the world.
Gotcha.
So set that one up. So I was a logistics producer, which means I set up all the logistics for the show. It requires a lot of yachts and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Okay, I got to go back and dig that one up.
Super fun, the Raft. You'll find it on. I think you can see it on Nat Geo, probably the Nat Geo website. You'll see the Raft.
That's great.
What else? Ultimate Survival Alaska. I was involved with the production company, not in the show itself, but a lot of us do the same shows, so they would end up. I don't know if you remember Ultimate Survival Alaska.
Is that the one where there's like teams of 3 and they're kind of racing around with different challenges?
Yeah. It's kind of like the Eco Challenge-ish.
It was like that, but there wasn't like prizes. It was just interesting teams of 3
doing challenges, difficult things.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite shows. I think that's the one where they started one season where you either had to go around a frozen lake or straight across, and one team, took their packs off and like tethered it to their body, and then they walked across. One team just carried their packs and ended up falling in. Like, is that the show you're talking about?
Yeah, it was by Brian Catalina. People probably wouldn't know, but Brian Catalina Productions did it, and I worked with Brian. The Raft was one of his as well. So it was a lot of the same people on that show. Yeah, the production side of it. Brian. We had a
guy on our show that did that show called Grady Powell. He was on.
Oh yeah, Grady. Yeah.
Cool
guy. Yeah, he was on a lot of them. He's good on TV.
He's good on TV. He's good on the podcast.
He's a chiseled jaw and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So Grady, he was on that show. And Brian was the original editor for the Eco Challenge. So that's how he got. A lot of people got their start from the Eco Challenge. We had a 20-year reunion, which would have been 2015.
Okay.
And there's about 100 people there from the Eco Challenge days, and most of them have gone on to do big things.
Right.
Like one of the girls at the time is Christy Nicolai, and she's produced, I think, every ceremonies for all the Olympics since the late 90s. Yeah. And these are big things. This is like her team just doing ceremonies, over 100 people, and they're there for months.
Yep.
I mean, so they kind of, people went off and did all these different things. Like Life Below Zero, that was one of the Eco Challenge guys. I mean, this just goes on and on and on and on and on. If you look at TV shows today, the community, we all know each other. So the community
Right.
has kind of spread out, but kind of created their own things. You watch the guys doing Naked and Afraid and The Amazing Race. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Name a show and some sort of wilderness
Connected.
adventure survival show. Probably the same people.
That's crazy.
All the same crowd.
That's really crazy. Okay. All right. Well, then, okay. Along those lines, I've got 3 adventure sports TV ideas for you. And so my question to you is, which one would you be most excited to produce? I'm an ideas guy. I've actually thrown ideas out on our podcast, and there's a show out right now called, it's like Race to Survive Alaska. And I literally said that exact idea to one of our contestants who's on the show alone, and now it's out there. So you never know. Like, this could be something that you make. Just saying. So 3 options. Letter A, Backpacking Magazine presents A Walk Across the World. A man and woman hike across all continents and attempt to survive the terrain, the weather, and, of course, each other. That's the first option. Option B, Eco Challenge, Masters Edition. Adventure racing all-stars from the days of yore go head-to-head with a team composed of Bear Grylls, Survivor Man, Mark Burnett, and Serena Williams. That's option 2. Option 3, or letter C, Alone, Celebrity Edition. Rich people are locked up by themselves in a resource-rich grocery store. Can they survive? There you go.
Definitely not C.
Okay.
A and B are intriguing.
Okay.
I think your presentation of A was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
It actually makes a lot of sense. Kind of the it's sort of Eco Challenge meets Amazing Race with a couple of people. It's kind of I think Don Mann had a very similar idea. A guy called Don Mann, Navy SEAL, who had Beast of the East. He produced Beast of the East.
Yep.
And did all sorts of Navy SEAL stuff in TV and whatever. He's still a very high SEAL guy, I believe.
Okay.
He was proposing the Amazing Race concept years before Amazing Race, and he was shopping it to networks.
Okay.
And then when it got produced by someone else, he was justifiably miffed.
Right.
Because what he didn't do is he didn't shore up the intellectual property rights, which is actually quite simple to do. It's kind of like this repository of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a patent. It's almost like a patent for TV show ideas, which is what you're doing.
I got to do that. I got to start doing that.
You should. It's very simple. You just go into you just enter it, and then when someone actually does it, you go, "Oh, my idea," and then you get a piece of it.
Okay. Well, I have ideas all the time, so I'll just start throwing all those ideas and just start registering them. And if
it's intriguing to see Mark and Serena Williams, and I actually met Serena Williams after an Eco Challenge.
Oh, really?
Yes. It was
okay, so I'm not that far off base then.
You're not really.
Okay.
It was because after the 2000 Eco Challenge, it was USA had picked it up, right? So USA Network was doing it after the Discovery Channel. They also were covering the US Open, and she had just started the US Open, and our team was at the US Open, like down at the nice little box watching the whole thing, and then we went on the night shows like Maury Povich and I don't remember, but Serena Williams was on one of them as well, and we were just chatting in the back room, and she was absolutely delightful, by the way. She was so sweet and such a sweetheart, and young at the time, obviously.
Right.
But that isn't your idea with Mark and Serena, and who else was
Bear
it?
Grylls and Survivor Man. Yeah.
Survivor Man. Yeah, I haven't met those two, but obviously Mark and Serena. That's intriguing.
Okay.
That's intriguing. I think I'll
Tuck it away. You can have that one for free.
Go with A.
It was called Eco Challenge Masters Edition, so I would watch. Just saying. But when Serena Williams met you, was she like Ian Adamson from the Discovery Channel Eco Challenge?
He had no idea who I was. Like, who's this dude? I mean, seriously. I think I was bald at the time. I had probably just started shaving my head, so it's like, who's this bald guy? Who's this old bald guy at the time?
Right. That's so funny.
Although your introduction was interesting because my wife was really quite famous. She'd been a mountain bike world champion, and then she went to TV and was very well known as a sideline reporter for the Professional Bull Riding Tour for 18 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she would get recognized then.
Oh my gosh, all the time. Millions and millions of people watching her 3 days a week on network television. Well, what really surprised her when we started dating originally was we'd be on flights together, but they would recognize me first. But it wasn't for what you'd think. It wasn't like, oh, there's the Eco Challenge guy. It was, I know you. You're from Big Brother. You're from The Bachelor. I mean, there was something completely unrelated, right? But it was just television, so they don't know. No one knows.
And you, of course, are like, "That's correct. I won that show."
I would just nod and smile and say, "Yep." It still happens today. It's so bizarre. I was in Italy last year at World Champs, and I was sitting in I guess an after event meal, like kind of formal meal, Olympic sport, and the girl sitting across me, she was looking at me going, and this woman was from Guatemala. And then she finally figured out, she goes, "You're Ian Adamson. You're the Eco Challenge guy."
No way.
Yeah, this is
no
2022.
way.
And I'm going, oh my God, this thing has legs. This is 20 years ago, for goodness sakes. How does people even remember?
Yeah. Well, you were on TV a lot. Like during those Eco Challenges, like your team was featured a ton. And I felt like you were one of the go-to commentators during and after the race. So yeah, people that were into that show, I could see that. All right, last question we ask everybody that comes on our show. What do you have going on? Is there anything you'd like to promote, whether it's your own social media or whether it's something you're working on? The floor is yours. What you got?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. These days I work in international sport, actually leader sports, obstacle sports, covers a lot of stuff like American Ninja Warrior kind of things, and obstacle racing, which would be like Spartan Race or Tough Mudder, that kind of stuff. So I, for strange reasons, founded and lead a sport. It's an international sport. We have national governing bodies in 120 countries. We'll have 160 by August, and then they represent about 30 million people doing all these different sports. We've been offering the platform for adventure racing. Hopefully, I don't know what they're going to do with that, but hopefully they'll come on board. But keep your eyes peeled for what's happening in the Ninja Warrior and obstacle end of the world, because we are starting to roll out events with footprint in Olympic sport, with pentathlon in this case for the first phase of the rollout. So pentathlon, if most people don't know what it is, it's 5 sports: swimming, shooting, running, fencing, and now obstacle, which is sort of like Ninja Warrior. Ninja Warrior is watched by a lot of people, like 1 billion people are watching this thing all over the world. So it's really well watched. Most people know what it is. I'm guessing you do.
Of course.
So we're doing that. We are now kind of morphed my athletic career into production, and now back into kind of full circle. Actually, I just kind of started in Olympic sport years ago, back into Olympic sport, and it's fun. It's super fun. Kids love it.
Wait, like a big part of the Ninja Warrior culture is those 2 guys that announce it. They're just going nuts every time somebody makes it, impressively over like a crazy obstacle. Are those part of the Olympic production? Are they going to bring those guys in for that?
It's not impossible. There's a history to this. It's kind of interesting. It started in Japan as a thing called Sasuke. Not spelled like that, but it's Sasuke. And I think
that was on. I think they showed that in America. They showed, even before it was big here, they showed that challenge.
It was on Esquire. Yeah. It was on Esquire Network. It became Esquire. So it got Americanized, and the reason it's called Ninja Warrior is because TBS, Tokyo Broadcasting Systems, or TBS Television, which has the IP rights, was trying to figure out what to call it that would be relatable. And the thing they came up with is something very Japanese, which is ninja, like Ninja Warriors, like the combat guys, because people kind of know what that is. Like, oh, that's Japanese. And that was the odd reason why it became called American Ninja Warrior in the TV show, which is an entertainment show. It's produced. No, the athletes are insanely good.
Oh, yeah.
But it is a produced show. So the sport version, which we've worked on very carefully for the past now 9 years, I should say I have, but now with a big organization around it, was to make sure the content that people consume, what they watch, is like what they do. So the TV shows spawned this whole community of people trying to get on the shows, which, then they start training and they start forming gyms and they start competing in the gyms, and the gyms compete against each other, and they form leagues, and the leagues compete. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And before you know, you got a sport. So a little bit very much like the Eco Challenge.
Right.
It was mostly known because it was a TV show. And people went, oh, that is so cool. I want to be on that, just like American Ninja Warrior. So the Eco Challenge in reality really kickstarted and grew and caused the explosion in adventure racing, because it was the big thing back in its day. Not many people know that now, but back in the 2000s, like the thing on television, the big show that Discovery did every year was the Eco Challenge. It was the big show. And there were, I think they say 340 million people were watching, 300 million at least were watching.
Really?
Yeah, 300 million around the world were watching this, which is why
they should have kept on producing it. That's crazy.
Well, they they gave it a shot with Amazon.
Yeah.
I think the timing was a bit different. I mean, there was a few things that I have my opinion, but
No, it was different. It was totally different than the original ones. The original ones were like Discovery Channel based, and they I could show some of those in my I'm a teacher, and I could show some of those in my socialist classes because they brought in some history, they brought in some culture, they brought in all sorts of things, and they did that a little bit with the latest Amazon version, and but they didn't invest in the teams the same way. It wasn't quite the same thing. So
it was it was a whole different spin on it. I think they had for sure people like Kevin and Scott and Tim Powell really knew what would play well, and how that would work, but. There was a big there was a lot of money. It was a very expensive show. There was a lot of moving parts and a ton of production people. They had the number was staggering. The number of production people on this was way more than 10 times what they used to do.
They were embedding camera people in with the teams, going through crazy stuff, and they were bringing drones with them. Yeah, they had all sorts of crazy things going on.
Yeah, the production cost was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I heard what it actually was, and it was incredible. And that's if it had been $1 million, probably would still be playing today. But it was nothing like that.
They gave teams $50,000 a piece just to show up, so that they covered all.
Well, and that was a discussion. So this was a discussion that had been. I was having a lot of discussions with Kevin and Scott and the guys before the show about what teams should be there, what's it going to take to get them. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that emerged in the community, as I was kind of, I wasn't placing teams, but I was recommending and trying to get the right teams in the right places, was that they'd say, yes, but I'm sponsored by Bob's Garage, and I need a patch that says Bob's Garage from Boise, Idaho on my. Saying that's not going to fly.
Yeah,
like, but Bob gives me $400 and helps me get to the race. So eventually, Kevin came out with this. Well, we'll just pay him.
Yeah,
right. Just like you do with like any other TV show, is you cast people and then you cover their costs. So that's basically what ended up happening. Was like, we don't want them to look like NASCAR jerseys. We want people to look right. They got to look clean, and they've got to have this branding that's just like the Olympics, right? So that was part of the why they got the $50,000. And the $50,000 was because that's you can kind of get there for $50,000. So you can it's not going to be a painful financial exercise. It used to be. And even back in the day, we understood from teams that were doing it themselves, it would cost them $75,000 or more to do an eco challenge. We were paid to do it, so we didn't. But we didn't really know that. We knew we had a budget and we would spend it. Or the sponsor would, Nike or whatever. So it was a bit different back then. But
different. Interesting. All right. Well, we'll look forward to all the Ninja Warrior Olympic challenges coming up, and thanks for continuing to produce awesome adventure stuff and share your wisdom on the show, Mr. Ian Adamson. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time,
Carl. It's my pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
All right. You wanted to talk about whether he remembers me or not. So what's the question?
It's just funny because I was like, hey, let's talk about it. You're like, I was like, what did I say? Like, what's the Bible verse? You're like, no. Let's talk about the interview. And then I started to talk about the interview and you're like, let's not get into it. Here's the Bible verse. So here we are again. This is what I deal with. That's kind
of what happened for sure.
This is what I deal with, people.
We don't usually cut right to the interview. We usually have at least a little bit of conversation. And so I was trying to just have a little bit more lead up, and you're like, nah. All right, then I'll reveal some things. Here are some secrets of what's going to come.
Don't do that. You jumped ahead. You got to accept. This is your hero. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, it was just kind of funny because you were like, do you remember meeting me? Like, you inspired me to do racing. I met you. If you don't remember, like I met you at this blah, blah, blah. He's like, yes, I do remember. He's like, I do remember meeting you. You were like, yeah, you were with Sarah Valentine and these other people. And he's like, yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
A, did you believe him? And B, what was your initial reaction when you heard, like, you remember me? When your hero says they remember you, what do you?
When your hero says that. Okay, so first of all, he's going to go back and listen to this episode, and you're embarrassing me right now, so thank you.
That's the point.
I'm not ever fanboy with anybody. You just got to be real with them. Even if you appreciate what they've done, and even if you've watched them on TV before, you just, like, I'd rather just connect with them on a different level and not just be like, hey, remember that one time? So I was joking. That was like an icebreaker joke where I said it sarcastically, like, you probably remember that, right? And what he how he responded was not like, yes, I remember you. It was, yes, I remember that, meaning the race, not me specifically.
I think that was your biggest fanboy-ish moment, though.
Yeah, it was kind of like a sarcastic comment. So,
anyway, well, take it as you will.
You didn't take it that way, so maybe I didn't perform.
So well. your heart wasn't like skipping a beat. You weren't like,
no. Nobody, like I said, nobody remembers me anyway. So why would he remember me from that? That's ridiculous. And that was like a momentary introduction. And at the time, I mean, I know that this is like a long time ago, but at the time in that world, just, kind of, there's like different worlds or different sports or whatever. At that time, like he was very big time. So I'm sure lots of folks introduced themselves and so
he's like, I don't remember you.
Let's talk about the meaty parts. He mentioned achieving excellent suffering and that their teams would look forward to that. And he said that my perspective shifting to not having type 2 fun was the same thing or along those lines. Like, what do you think about that concept?
I mean, I think that like he mentioned something also about like getting lost. Oh, and he's like, oh, that could be kind of fun. Right. I think that's the whole mentality. I think I like that mentality. I think we've talked about this before. Like I kind of look forward to when something kind of goes wrong, and it kind of like really puts you to a real test of like, what do you know? How will you get out of this? Obviously, you're not going to go try to put yourself in harm's way intentionally, but like when it happens, like, are you ready for it? So I think, especially in a race like this, how do you not have to like? I'd want to be surrounded by people who are like that. I think that's where you and I would be really strong. I think we like to solve those little problems, and it's part of the fun. So
what we haven't had though, and I'm really curious how you would handle this, or what we haven't had together, is we haven't had meltdown person who, like, let's say we do get lost. Like you and I are going to logically, like, okay, well, we tried this way, we're not seeing this peak. Like let's try to figure out the map, whatever, GPS, whatever. We haven't had meltdown person who's like, well, now we got to go back, and I'm already tired. I already got like they just freak out of that stuff. Like that person exists out there. Oh yeah, and they just can't handle that mental obstacle. How would you handle that type of person?
Oh, that's hard. That's hard. I mean, I think it's easier when you have people who are, I don't want to say on your side, but like if you're alone and you had multiple people like that, even one or two, like that
one's enough in my opinion.
One is enough. But if they're contagious, like that could just decimate a trip in a second, right? So I don't know. I really don't know what I do on that one. That's a hard one. I think I'd try to simplify it. I'd sit them down. I'd calm them down, get them a candy bar like a Snickers. I'd sit them down and I'd be like, look, this is where we are on the map. Like, these are our options. I know you're struggling. Like these are the things that we have to do or can do. Like, can you wrap your head around one of these, whether we backtrack, whether we do this is how far these are,
Yep.
I think I just try to simplify it and kind of like reel them back in.
So you're gonna communicate potentially bad news. You're gonna say, okay, so we're up. We just climbed this really hard hill. Sorry, this is the wrong hill. We got to go back down and then climb up this other hill instead, which is actually probably a little bit harder.
Yeah, I'll be like, look, if you didn't go over that hill to take butterfly pictures or whatever and get Carl's Snickers out of his backpack, we wouldn't have this. No, I'm not gonna do that. But I think I just present the facts. I mean, I try to do it in a good way, but like, if I'm like, look, we already climbed over this mountain, right? We did it. But look, if we go back, it's only going to be 5 miles until this like, little escape hatch route we can go, or we keep going and it's like 15.
So you're like the motivator, you're like the inspirer. Like, hey, if we work together, we can do this. And I know you can do it.
This is where a little Bear Grylls helps us. Like, no, you got this. You got this. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, that'd be my approach initially.
My approach is a little bit different. I'll be honest. If they're like, dropping the group's morale, they're just like a drain. You get out the Garmin, you press the SOS button, you drop in their lap, you say, help's coming, we'll see you later.
I thought you'd be like smack in the face and be like, we're out of here. Let's go.
We'll press the SOS button. You wait here for the chopper. We're going to go navigate correctly and finish the trip and have an adventure. So,
such an empathetic leader.
I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
What would you do? Would you splash water in their face? No, and like, wake up?
I try to separate myself from that person. Like I'll try to be the encourager, kind of like you. A lot of times that doesn't work. When they're in the midst of the meltdown, they're just gonna they don't care that they're draining the morale of the group. They're so self-absorbed at that point that they just kind of go into their own little world. And so I'll just separate themselves out, or I'll like have them hang back off the back of the group so that they're not draining everybody.
Wait. You'll have them hang back. Be like, hey, I know you're melting down. Why don't you just hang back there?
Like hike behind us. You're bringing up the rear.
Or would you just? I could see you. I could see myself doing this actually too. I could see if somebody's melting down, I just like quietly just pick up my backpack, grab my gear, do a little eye contact, Carl. Yeah, and then just start walking.
Okay.
And just go.
So I'll the one that comes to mind is I'll share that we had like a high school, like a youth group kid who had no business going on the backpacking trip. Mom forced him to go, which is not who you want on the trip.
Yikes.
Hill number 1, the first hill, about a half mile in, he basically was like giving up, but he's like a, high school kid, so he can't give up. So I took almost everything out of his pack, put it in my own pack.
Ooh.
Then I bungeed myself to him so that I was towing him up the hill.
Bungeed yourself to?
Yeah, which is actually an adventure racing technique. So I was prepared to do this with high school kids.
Where'd you attach the bungee? Where'd you attach the bungee?
To his like sternum strap.
Okay.
Yep. And to the back of my backpack. So as I'm yanking him up the hill, he has basically a weightless pack. He's just whining at me about how hard this is, right? I can't leave him. We can't, we're half mile into the trip. He's coming. Like, we're going to make him come. But I'm hanging back and I'm giving a gap to the next part of the group so that he's not draining the morale of the rest of the group.
I mean, how embarrassing is that for him to be physically towed with a bungee?
Yeah. So he's one of those, those people that like, they don't have that
he doesn't care.
Yeah,
doesn't care. Okay.
It's like, you deserve to do this. Like, I'm paying you to do this. And really, he wasn't. It was a free trip. So
I do not envy you in that moment. That's tough.
Yeah. So anyway.
Good for you, though. Good for you.
He was not willing to achieve excellent suffering. Bring it back to that
question.
So
when you guys all got back, was he like, hey, teacher or whatever, Carl, like, thanks for...
Oh, not even close. Are you serious? and yeah, like I chalked up to a learning experience. Like, I need to be more forceful, really just in life, to be honest, but just specifically with the parents that are like forcing kids to go on trips.
Did you tell his mom? Yeah. Did you have a little combo with the mom? You're like, listen, Linda, let's not say Linda. Let's go with Sally. Listen, Sally.
We have a Linda that listens to us who is already not happy with our interrupting.
Oh, you know what? I can do Linda, but let's say it's hers. She's L-Y-N-D-A. I'm going to say L-I-N-D-A. So this is the other Linda. So, I mean, did you have a talk with her? Were you like, look, I had to like physically strap your kid to myself and drag him out of the park?
You didn't teach long enough to know how these parents behave, man. They roll up, they grab their kid, they don't say thank you, they drive away.
That's just so disappointing.
These are the people that they do not, they're either embarrassed, they don't appreciate anything. This is not your...
They were probably just happy for the break away from their kid, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right?
I've dealt with this for 20 years, man. The people that you pour into the most as students, for the most part, are the ones that appreciate it the least. It's
true. That's true. That's sad, but true. Okay.
And usually you get, the parents complaining about it. So I had that this year where, I'm not going to go into detail, but it just happens, man. So
no strongly worded email for anybody. You just like chalked it and you like moved on.
No, just not coming again. So, all right.
Okay,
Enough of that. So, okay. What'd you think about the Bermuda Triangle reality show?
Well, before we get into that, I have a small comment, and I think this needs addressing before we go Bermuda Triangle. I heard you talk to him. He was talking about something. I don't remember what it was, but then you're like, oh yeah, I got like, I got to get my buddy Derek to stop taking so many rests, and it was like you were trying to joke with him about like, oh, I have this problem about such and such, like my buddy, my co-host, and he takes way too many breaks. And it was like your sad attempt at a joke.
No, it's not for him. That's for everybody else.
That was for everybody else, and which is good. And he just was like,
he doesn't care.
He didn't care.
Anybody that doesn't have like the backlog of our show,
he's like,
anytime I reference you and you're not there, they don't know what I'm talking about, who I'm talking about. That's for everybody else.
That's great. So it's like two things going on.
It's kind of like an inside comment for our fellow.
I caught it though. I caught it. Yeah. Okay. I didn't appreciate it, but I caught it.
It happens like every interview. Anytime you're not there, I usually make some sort of quip about you. This is not new.
No, I know. I expected a better one. That's all.
Okay.
Let's get into the Bermuda Triangle. Let's talk about all that fun stuff. So I guess with the Bermuda Triangle thing, I thought it was hilarious because you clearly we're trying to joke about the whole like, are we gonna get sucked into the vortex of the Bermuda Triangle and get lost for whatever? And he was just like, didn't even
respond.
Didn't want to jump into that fun boat with you.
No.
How did that make you feel?
Fun boat.
How did that make you feel? Your hero just flat out ignored your sense of humor. Hates your sense of humor.
Used to getting ignored. That happens a lot. Typically, I'll delete those parts out of the interviews. I didn't this time.
By your hero, though? By your hero?
But it happens too. That happens all the time. Are you serious?
How many heroes do you talk to? I mean, me, obviously. But
we've had issues. I don't even know if you're aware of this because this happens when you're interviewing too, where he did respond to what I said. He didn't respond to that part of it, but we've like reacted to people and they don't even like respond at all. They're just like, radio silence.
Because I think that there's certain people that are so I don't know what that is. Like they're just so genuine, or they're so focused on what they're talking about. They are just going to continue down that vein, right? They're not going to be like, "Oh, that was a joke. That's funny." They're not going to do any of that. They're just like, "I am a kind-hearted person, and I will continue to say what I'm going to say, or I'm going to keep talking about racing and eco challenges or whatever." I think he was just one of those guys.
No, I think that he might not believe in the Bermuda Triangle vortex, but it's not a joke, man. Like, I'm not saying that the vortex is a real thing, but the fact that they put the survival thing specifically in the Bermuda Triangle, there has to be a reason for that. Is because of the legend of the triangle, right?
Right. Everybody is thinking that.
Right.
Do they get that?
Right. And there's been some crazy stories where there's like these, ships that were inhabited and suddenly there's nobody on the ship. There's no sign of foul play. Right. Everybody's off the ship, gone, and it's just like sailing around. There has to be some sort of vortex, right?
Gotta be. Vortex.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we need an episode on vortexes. I don't know.
Well, we did one on the Alaska Triangle, stuff that went missing there, and there's like a show on that now.
A lot of mysteries out there, guys.
Yeah,
a lot of mysteries out there.
We got to wrap this. Like that was an awesome time with Ian Adamson.
I hope you had a fun time. Did you? Have a fun time?
I think there's takeaways. I think there's direct takeaways for folks that like adventure out there, and so we've got trivia coming up right after this. All right. So what's this trivia called?
We got trivia. We got coming up. It's called "How Well Do I Know My Hero?"
Okay.
Are you ready?
All right. Coming up right after this. Okay, how well do I know my hero trivia is brought to you by Vaucluse Gear. Do you sweat less when you wear sunglasses because they make you feel cool? Then you should try something that really works. Get that back sweat to evaporate so the heat can dissipate with a Vaucluse ultralight ventilation backpack frame. Creating ventilation and airflow between you and your pack will help you stay drier and cooler in hot weather and prevent hypothermia in cold weather. Use coupon code Blisters for $10 off at VaucluseGear.com. All right, you're gonna ask me impossibly hard questions about Ian Adamson.
I figured this is your hero. You've done Googling. I thought these were pretty basic, but we're gonna find out. This might just be a complete bomb of trivia. I don't know. Appreciating
all the adventures he's done and watching those, eco challenge documentaries years ago is very different than like being obsessed with somebody.
It's not really obsessed. I'm not obsessed with Kelly Slater, the greatest surfer of all time, but I know how many times he's been a world champion. I mean, these are things you just know. All right.
Fair enough. All right. If it's like specific to the eco challenge, I might know the answers.
Okay. Well, I don't know. How many times has Ian been a world champion? How many times?
Oh, but that's not specific enough because there's so many different races
that he could be a world champion at. Like
and so many different sports too. Like,
if they're reviewing it, like I'm looking right here, Adamson is a blank time world champion adventure racer.
Okay.
There you go.
It
includes Eco Challenge, Primal Quest, Raid, something.
Outlaw. Okay.
There's a bunch.
All right. I'm gonna say so not multiple choice.
Not this one, no.
5.
That is incorrect. It's 11 times.
Okay.
11, more than twice. Sorry, Ian. Sorry.
All I know is the Eco Challenge. They didn't televise all that other stuff.
Well, you should have
televised one of them, I guess.
It's called Google and care about who you are here about. Number 2, how many Guinness World Records does he hold? Is it 1, 2, 4, or 6?
1.
That is incorrect. He owns 4 world records.
My second guess would be 2. So yeah,
2 times he had the longest distance paddled in 24 hours. That's crazy. Okay. He also had the highest altitude for an obstacle course.
Okay.
And he had the highest altitude fitness class in 20. Those last 2 are in 2021. So this is recent. Those last 2.
Okay. Oh, all right. I'll take the incorrect answer in this one.
You're going to have to.
Let's self-reflect here a little bit, Derek.
Yeah.
Those are Guinness records. Like really? Really?
I don't write the book, Carl. I just report the news.
I'm not asking for you to report about the book. I'm asking for you to self-reflect. What's your opinion? Do those sound like legit world records?
I'm not one to decide what a world record is.
I get an orange off my counter. I walk 10 miles. Is that a world record? The longest orange holder.
I'm going to say yes, those are world records because I know there's world records for much, much ridiculous. Like how many plates can I spin? How many, ridiculous stuff. I think
it's nonsense. I think that they're picking and choosing because I've actually applied for multiple Guinness World Records and gotten rejected, and they're similar to that style of things. So.
How fast can you cut what hair you don't have is not a world record, though. That's not a thing. That's not it doesn't work like that. So
All right.
I apologize, everybody. How fast can Carl put a backpack on and take it off, take a break? It's not a world record either. So number 3.
Fastest sit-down break on a backpacking trip. 2 steps, Derek, world record.
Carl broke it with 0. He was in the car while he had his backpack. Okay, number 3. Trivia's failed. That's your 3rd, I believe, right? It's 3-3 now.
Yeah, we're now tied again.
That's too bad. Name 2 companies that have sponsored Ian. This is an easy one. Give me just 2.
Okay.
2.
How well are there like a bunch?
There's like 3 or 4. One of them is extremely well known.
Well, Nike, that's probably one you're thinking of.
Nike is one. Okay, just give me one of the other ones.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't know.
Wow.
Like his team name was frequently Team Eco Internet, and then like 1 year's team was Team Nike. That's the reason why I know Team Nike. So I'll just guess a random outdoor brand, Petzl.
No, incorrect. It's either Giant Bikes or GU Energy Labs.
Yeah, how do you say that? GU? Is that how you say it?
G space U.
All right.
Hyphen.
Goo?
No.
Goo? Yeah, it's Goo.
GU. GU.
They're like the original, energy shot.
Okay, well, there you go. Go.
All right.
All
right, there you go. Over 3. Just like last week for you. We're not doing so well. Got a streak
well
going
done.
there.
I'm proud of you for failing again with pride.
Okay. Well, I fail for you. So
don't do that. Tidbits? You got any tidbits for us?
Not today, my friend. That's all I got.
Oh, no tidbits at all.
We're kicking them to the next episode. I'll save them.
Unbelievable. Let's save them for the next episode. That sounds good. Well, that's it for me too, guys. We will see you next time. Thanks again for checking us out. I hope you enjoyed the interview. We will see you next time. And remember, guys, if Carl's happy, we're all happy. Unless it's your hero hates your sense of humor, then he's not going to be happy about that. So we'll see you next time.